just like the McRib, you know.
Yeah, minus the bone chunks.
I've never had one with bone chunks in it.
Well,
granted, I don't have them that often.
Because they don't sell them that often.
Because of the bone chunks.
Among the few that I have ever had, I've never experienced that.
No, I've not once had a McRib.
I have had nary a single McRib.
I've not once had a...
I've not once had.
I have not once.
I have.
Yes, indeed. Well, we're sipping the last not McRib juice, but the last eggnog.
The last of the not McRib juice.
This
is not McRib juice.
That does not narrow it down.
It's neither McRib nor juice.
If this was McRib juice, which it certainly is not.
See, we can't say that because it actually
That's
isn't.
implying that it is McRib juice. Oh,
By saying it's not McRib juice, you have now made everyone suspicious that maybe they're just drinking McRib juice.
Hey, I'm a man of exquisite taste.
And then John looks at his calendar, is like, hey, they're not selling the McRib this time of year.
No.
And then we're making a temporal anomaly.
Yep. Which we
Not that we've never done that before.
certainly not recently.
Certainly not recently.
Or 5 years ago, as it is currently 2025.
Or next week.
As we. Well.
Sorry, we didn't let that bit go.
Yeah. No.
Hey, we didn't... Did we really do the bit? We just referenced the bit.
Right.
I mean, we could if you want.
We're not going to. See, I think it makes it more fun when you just reference it.
Anyway,
And I don't know. There was perfect food for that.
all that by way of introducing the concept of drinking the last eggnog of the year, likely.
It's like the McRib, but not.
But essentially in no way similar.
Imagine the
It's
McRib
seasonal.
ground up into a paste and served
See,
as a drink.
the
except
McRib
for
isn't
nothing like that at
seasonal
all.
per se.
Imagine the McRib ground up into a paste and served as a drink,
The McRib
except for
itself,
not like
I
that
don't
at
know
all.
if there's like a specific season they do
Right.
it.
It
in.
just happens.
It just
to be-
happens in its own season.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
It is a limited run.
It is McRib season, my
Yeah.
dudes.
It is McRib's.
I'm hunting McWibs.
Yeah. But yeah, we're drinking the last eggnog of the year. This one isn't even spiked. How are we this?
Because we are
We are who we are.
who we are. This is a funny bit. Talking about the McRib and eggnog.
The McNog. You heard it here first, folks.
I'm surprised they've never done that.
Yeah.
Or maybe, perhaps they have.
They might have
and-
done like a McNog like McFlurry or something like that.
Yeah, I bet something like that.
It probably sucks.
Some sort of shake, yeah. It's hard to replicate the excellence of eggnog in a fast food drink.
They can replicate the excellence of a shamrock in the
Oh,
in the
yeah,
form
the
of a
shake.
drink.
Yeah, that is. Yeah.
Another seasonal drink
Indeed.
that I much enjoy.
Shamrock
go
shakes
to
are pretty good.
you go to McDonald's at any old time. Hey, can I get a McRib and a Shamrock shake? Can
Served
I get me
July.
some of that Szechuan sauce to go with it?
And I'll have the Lilo and Stitch Happy Meal. I'm assuming that's a thing.
I don't know.
More than
More than
likely.
likely. It's a Disney film drink. When did
In the
McDonald's
heyday
start
of
doing
Happy
Meals? Like
Yeah.
tie-in Happy Meals.
I think Happy Meals have been
specifically.
around for a while, but
They've been
like
around for a
Probably
while.
late 90s, I'd guess.
they're still
Yeah.
technically a thing. They're just not like as big of a deal.
They're not as
That's not their branding these days.
No.
It's like, hey, let's give your children a bunch of calories and call it happy.
And a skin disease in the ball pit.
Or something.
That they're also phasing out.
Yeah. Which, I mean,
It was about
probably
time.
a good thing.
What they shouldn't have phased out is those Game Cubes with Mario Kart Double Dash.
The McDonald's of yesteryear gave the children the Happy Meal, giving the children a sense of joy and wonder, and the Play Place giving them claustrophobia and a fear of abandonment.
Or what are they putting in the Happy Meal to give kids joy and wonder? That sounds illegal.
I mean, can't be anything more illegal than what's in the ball pit.
Fair.
Oh man.
You think anybody owns one of those
for sure.
GameCube kiosks and
It's
has
gotta
it
be
in the
somewhere.
corner of their man cave or
They
something
did
from
that for the
McDonald's?
N64 as well, didn't they?
They might have, yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't observant of what was in a McDonald's during that time
There
it was
was
out. I was very
one
young.
McDonald's that kind of lagged behind the trend, as things tend to do in this part of the world. They still have the animatronic Ronald McDonald and stuff in the Dilworth.
In the East 10 one?
Yeah, you remember that? Yeah.
I remember that when I was a kid.
I just the ones I'm familiar with had just awkward shaped benches that were Ronald McDonald.
Yeah.
Or was it Ronald McDonald sitting on the bench awkwardly, either to make kids feel like they're sitting with Ronald or to prevent homeless people from sleeping on it? I'm not sure which. Probably both.
Probably both.
What if we kissed on the anti-homeless McDonald's bench? But just kidding. Unless.
Audibly,
It's- you do
audibly
like the little-
twirls index
Well, you do the
fingers.
twirl index fingers, but you do it like the M for the golden arch. Unless.
It's like the heart thing with your hands,
Yeah.
but it's like McDonald's.
Unless ba 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 ba.
This is just turning into the McDonald's episode.
Yeah.
Welcome to the McDonald's cast, guys.
Oh man,
What-
it's just
What are your guys' thoughts on the retirement of Mayor McCheese?
Mayor McCheese.
What was that?
That was like
one
the 80s.
character's birthday that they had recently.
The moon guy that turned into an alt-right
the
symbol.
purple shake.
Oh right,
Oh, yeah.
Grimace.
Yeah, Grimace.
Yes.
There was apparently a Grimace parade at some point recently, and there was a photograph taken from basically the same angle as like the famous Tiananmen Square picture.
No.
So you can imagine how that played out. Man, my favorite post about it was just like Grimace, no.
I bet there's a McDonald's
There was-
podcast out there somewhere.
Oh yeah, definitely. There was that was what 4 or 5 months ago. They had like the big Grimace shake thing that turned into a sort of eldritch horror thing on the
Meme.
internet. Yeah,
There was the trend on whatever website where it's like, I'm going to try the Grimace shake. Cut
And
to
the-
black and cut to them on the floor in a pool
like
of
in
purple.
a pool of purple and some grotesque posture, like they've been seized and destroyed by some ethereal force.
Yes. It was quite funny. I wonder if you can pinpoint where that started. Because there's somebody who did that joke first. It might have been like a Reddit thread or something like that, and then became
Yeah. It was certainly a TikTok thing. Not that I
definitely a
really-
TikTok thing. I mean, a lot of things. Are
Usually
TikTok
those
things.
things start on 4chan and
Yeah.
filter their way out to
Yeah.
other places.
Yeah.
The trickle down effect, as it were.
So yeah, that's probably the sort of thing. Like 2 images of some anime character, one on his face and one holding a drink with a poorly edited Grimace shake in it, something like that.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, anime is somehow involved
Turns out people on Reddit like anime.
on the internet in general.
Yeah.
People who don't have good social skills.
There was a thing that went around recently saying how the Kazakh language sounds like a motor or something like that, but there's no audio on the video. It's just like a news anchor talking, but there's no audio. And so a bunch of people are sharing it this proves dead internet theory. The fact that nothing is
Nobody
running
on
about
the
people anymore.
it's just you on the internet. Every person you think you're interacting with is just a bot.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Sure.
So, I mean, there's certainly a lot of bots on the internet, so it's not entirely unfounded.
But
Just a little.
now the internet is this bubble with you in it and a bunch of bots and a feedback loop.
Yep.
That's an interesting theory.
Yeah,
I haven't bought into it yet. They
No.
have to do some work on that.
but
We have to start not getting the same information for me to really start thinking. Also, because other people are posting it and seeing other people's posts,
Yeah.
but if When you start seeing nobody post about dead internet theory, that's when it comes true.
Yep.
That's now nobody's gonna hear this, and it's
Yep. Maybe that's why we don't have more than 2 listeners. We're the only people left on the internet.
Those 2 listeners are bots.
Yeah.
Thank you, John, for being a bot. Thank you, Mom. You're my favorite bot.
Thank you.
Comment
for
below,
being
I'm
my
not a bot, to
bot.
prove us wrong. Like and subscribe to prove you're not the dead internet. Wait, that doesn't prove anything.
No,
Oh,
but it make
goodness.
number go up, and number go up make dopamine go.
Yeah, man. While we're talking about like sort of schizo type stuff,
We went from McDonald's to schizo stuff.
We went from schizo stuff to schizo stuff.
if we wanted schizoids to be social outcasts, why did we give them such a cool name? That's all I'm asking. Schizoids.
We gotta cause a schism somehow.
Yeah. Unrelated, but what was it? Zathura, was that the name of the book where these kids do like a spaceship themed board game and they get sucked into their house gets sucked into
Zathura?
actual space. Exactly. Yeah, Zathura.
Oh,
That book.
the space Jumanji.
Yeah, that book creeped me out. I think it was written by the same guy.
I only watched the movie, but the movie also creeped me out.
Yeah.
I have never interacted with
We
either
had-
beyond being aware that it existed.
We
because
had the
internet.
book for some reason, and it was a very sort of liminal space kind of a book. At least the feeling you got while reading it. I don't think this is the first time I've talked about it on the podcast either. Well,
As far as I can recall, it
No,
is.
it's
Okay.
the first time.
I know. Okay, I've discussed. Maybe
So
it was
either you haven't before, or we're
it was a different
Or
conversation.
we're the bots.
Oh,
we're the bot.
and our apartment is now in space, and there is a giant alien trying to eat.
No,
our stuff.
there's no such thing as gaslighting, James. You made that up.
because you're crazy. Yeah. It was like recently I was like, yeah, Gaslight's named after that film in the 40s that came up with. You're like, no, that's not right.
The term existed before that.
Yeah, you
I
you
lived
went
out
out
with a straight face.
like for
It
like,
took him a solid minute to
like,
figure it
hold
out.
on.
That was really good.
Hold on. It's like yeah. It's like when you're in a dream and you're trying to like get like somebody in your dream to act normal, but they won't. But you're awake and it's not nearly that.
It sounds like you're entering your paranoid arc.
Yeah.
You're
Me right now.
Yeah, right
your,
now.
your cognitive distortion arc,
Yeah.
your schizophrenic arc.
Yeah. I'm paranoid posting.
That's what this entire podcast
I am
has
scared
been.
maxing right now.
I mean,
I'm crawling into my room and hiding core.
look at the audacity waveform. It's only your voice that comes up. This has been an episode of The Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Man.
Or like Black Mirror or something.
Oh gosh. Yeah, Twilight Zone. Prophetic media gets less interesting the more it comes real, in my opinion.
Well, yeah. It turns out everything that sci-fi has been warning us about for 60 years is actually happening now, and
Give or
there's no way
take a
to
few
stop it.
details.
Give or take a few details of how it happens, but like they were, you know, honestly, there were people imagining things about the future of technology, and guess what? The current technology is made by people who imagined what they could do with it.
Yeah.
And they happen to overlap in ways that are like, yeah, they predicted how people would be self-centered and scary and mean and gross.
When are the buggers coming?
Yeah. That's what I want to know. I want to have I want to like have
You want to send 6-year-olds to military boot camp?
Yeah, I want to see
Have them be severely traumatized by wiping out an entire race of beings
and accidentally killing 2 people but never being told that's what happened.
and then going on a quest for thousands of years while hopping through relativity in order to ease your conscience by restoring this particular race to its former glory.
I need to read the sequel books. at some point?
Yeah, I only ever read the first one. We did a podcast about that, like, 2 years ago? I don't even remember.
It wasn't that long.
Not that
but
long.
It was a minute.
It's been a minute. We did talk
It's
about
been
it.
a length of time.
For some
Scroll
reason,
backwards.
the YouTube has started suggesting clips from the movie to me.
Huh.
I don't know why, but I watched most of the movie. It gets like the story beats mostly correct.
Yeah, it messes. It cuts out a bunch of like the side stuff with his siblings, and
Oh yeah,
like ages him up and
his
condenses the
his
timeline.
siblings become internet trolls and take over the government.
Yep.
I mean,
So like it gets the broad strokes down, but if you like really like a lot of things about the book, it kind of glosses over and misses a little bit of the nuance.
yeah, it was that movie came out in like 2013 or something. So it was just like we need copy paste young adult fiction.
Right, that was the young adult
action.
fiction kick that
Yeah.
Hollywood was going through.
You telling me it's a book that people read and it's sci-fi? Let's make this thing happen.
Although at least they were adapting new things
Yeah.
every couple years.
True.
Which that would be refreshing at this point,
It
even
would
if
be.
they're all mediocre young adult novel stuff.
Yeah. Alas.
We had so many good segues like 2 minutes ago.
We did. Speaking of having so many good segues 2 minutes ago,
Speaking of gaslighting,
Speaking of paranoia, we're the Palladium Papists. I'm James.
I'm Nathan.
and I'm Riley.
We're talking about the what was the name of the director? Anyway, the film,
It's
the
an
Irish
Irish.
film Calvary.
In a world where one man will decide whether to pull a lever and kill one man, or not pull a lever and allow 5 people to die, find out in Philmosophical.
I'm pulling it up, Jamie.
There we go.
Obviously, this is a philosophical.
Yes, philosophical movie about
Get
Calvary.
philosophical about films on this kind of show.
Because leave it to Riley to give us like new, very serious, dark films to like ponder deeply.
Which other of those have I given you?
Shoot.
Give us the book, The Kite.
the Kite Runner was
Kite
that was a
Runner,
while ago though.
That was a while ago.
But
I remember that one being like, oh, that went dark places.
The guy, the Austrian
John Michael
guy,
McDonough.
the
is the
Austrian
director.
guy.
That's not dark. I mean, I guess
Well,
it's, kinda
it's sad.
a hidden life.
It's sad
Oh,
and
Hidden
serious. A hidden life. Thank you.
Yes.
It's sad and serious.
And also very Catholic focused.
and very touching and heartwarming
Yes.
and good at the same time, which is
Right.
what distinguishes it from this
Very
movie.
stimulating and moving films. So good job, because we're 2 for 2 so far.
Which is weird, but it happened twice.
If
I had a nickel for every deep, engaging movie you've shown us.
I'd have 2 nickels, but it's weird that it happened twice.
Isn't that
But
much?
anyway,
Anyway.
Weird. It's actually a delightful pattern.
yeah. Anyway, backhanded compliments is not really. Okay, Calvary.
Yes, Calvary is the story of a priest, Father James, in Ireland, and the
Small village.
small village, relatively, rural parish, and the movie opens with a scene of him sitting in the confessional. A man enters and begins to
Who we don't see.
who we don't see. It's in the box. It's behind a screen, like any good Irish Catholic would do. And the man starts to regale how he suffered abuse as a child. And, Father James is understandably taken aback by this. And important to
priest.
note is that the sacramental formula is not observed. They don't begin in the usual way. The penitent is not a penitent.
In fact,
He is not there seeking to be forgiven. He's just there making accusations, and he's just saying things. And Nathan, you had to.
well, I was saying he's not penitent. He's to the point
He's
where
making a statement.
he's making a more than a statement, a threat.
Yeah.
Yes, and it sort of caps off with him saying, "Killing a bad priest would do nobody any good, but I'm going to kill a good one. I'm going to kill you, Father." I'll do it in, say, a week. So
Meet
I'll
me
give
on
you a
the
little
beach on Sunday.
little time to get your house in order. It'll be quite a trip to kill a priest on Sunday, and leaves. What a way to start a movie.
Indeed.
And so the rest of the movie is the folding out of Father James getting his house in order, as it were. And we meet various parishioners and kind of get a grasp of their life and their story and the way they interact with each other and with Father James. We have, I believe her name is Veronica, who is, she's a woman at the parish, and she is known to be not committed to her marital vows,
Shall we say.
to be charitable about it. And Father James notices that she's got a black eye, and, well, she's wearing sunglasses to Mass, and there's only one reason you might do that. So he kind of uncovers that she's been smacked around a bit and does a little bit of investigating, talks to her husband, and her husband, who works at the butcher shop, is like, "Oh, I didn't do that. That was her boyfriend, the guy from Guinea."
It's like you're pretty quiet, or you don't seem to be too bothered by the fact your wife has a boyfriend. So it kind of gathers that their relationship isn't the best.
Indeed. So he goes and talks to the guy, and he's not Irish. He's from Guinea, so he doesn't have the same kind of societal relationship with Catholicism that the rest of them do. But nonetheless, he's perhaps even more dismissive of the priest and just kind of flicks his cigarette at him after their discussion and says, "Get off my case," And you start to see a picture that most of the people in this parish don't have much honor for the church anymore. It is all
This is something
thoroughly
they do on Sunday.
secularized, and it's just like you're a fixture of a bygone era.
Also, his daughter comes to visit.
Yes.
Which, being a Catholic priest, you don't normally have those.
And you're left to wonder, what's going on here? And then he kind of explains through some dialogue that this is my daughter, and I was married before I became a priest. My wife passed away, and then I joined the priesthood.
And she's got some struggles of her own. Having, recently, issues with, seems depression and attempting suicide. And so she's sort of come to stay with her dad for a few days and sort things out for a bit.
And there's the atheistic doctor. He's the classic,
Very
the trope.
jaded.
Very jaded, very dark, but nonetheless kind of has the care of a medical practitioner and does what he can, does his job well.
Even though he enjoys clashing with the priest. There's a kid who comes into the church and talks to Father, not even in a confessional way. He just consults him about, hey, I'm considering about joining the army because I've been interested in what it feels like to take a life.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's an awful reason to join the army. We're not even in wartime. What are you doing? And he's like, I'm going to do it anyway.
I have a lot of struggles with my attitude towards women, and instead of being violent towards them, how about I just be violent for the government?
And he's like, that's not how you deal with that. Also, your issues with women have like other solutions and problems you need to sort out. That's not how you're covering a problem with a problem. And
There's an old American writer who lives out in an island nearby, and Father James visits him and brings him some liqueur, and he asks for a gun. He's like, "What are you going to use that gun for?" He's like, "Oh, if it comes down to it, I don't want to suffer. I just want to end it."
Because he's getting old.
He's getting old.
There's a rich guy who owns a bunch of land out.
Doesn't
just in the
care
farm.
about anything.
I don't care about anything.
To the point where his wife and kids left him because he doesn't care about anything. And is a bit of a shady financial dealer.
He's like
Ill-gotten
desperately
gain.
trying to like say I've done a good thing by like, hey, Father, How much can I write the church a check for?
Well, if it doesn't matter to you, why not just to have a bigger and bigger number? Because it's clearly you're not about doing a work of charity. You're about flaunting your wealth.
There's also another priest who lives and serves with Father James, who is
A bit insincere as a person, generally speaking.
Perhaps not insincere, just a little stuffy and
Yeah.
kind of has a more worldly attitude. Doesn't necessarily see things with eyes of faith. And, he's kind of, he wears, there's an interesting contrast set up between the priests because Father James wears a cassock, and which is, by this time in the life of the church, not what you typically see clerics wearing anymore. Whereas the other priest, whose name escapes me for the moment, will often wear gray clerical shirts, which is what you would see, quote unquote, progressive priests wearing,
especially in Ireland. And it's all, there's even like a subtle little thing to point out how they notice things differently. Is like Father James notices that the altar boy keeps stealing the communion wine when they're not looking, and the other priest hasn't noticed because he doesn't see things the same way as he does. He's also got kind of a sort of not well, yeah, it's like fatherly relationship with the sort of goofy little altar boy, like in a healthy way. He's like, you're such a weird kid, but you're a good kid, kind of a thing. Like he'll do something like mischievous, but then he'll be like painting a landscape thing on the beach. Kind of a minor character, but interesting interaction.
So yeah, the week kind of goes on. He doesn't like...
He's just going about his normal day-to-day business as a priest.
He does consult the bishop. He's like, hey, I got this threat in the confessional. And the bishop's like, was it following the proper form and rites and stuff? If not, then you're not under the seal, and
he's like, do you know who it is?
You know who it is? He's like,
yep, I do.
Sure does.
We don't know who it is, but he does.
And he chooses not to go to the police with it. He chooses not to run out of town yet. That'll come later. We'll get to that. There's an interesting scene with a French couple who are on holiday. I think it's the lady's French, the man is Italian, if I remember that correctly. But they're foreigners, and the husband gets in an accident of some kind, and he passes away, and Father James comes to administer last rites and to console the wife, and it's one of those
devout.
She's an actual Catholic, unlike most of these workaday Irish folk who have lost the faith in their hearts but still kind of go through the motions.
She's sad about losing her husband, but has a lot of solace.
She has such a tremendous faith. It's a touching scene, and it's like the only time that Father James like prays with someone. He's just like, let's just say a simple prayer here, and they recite a Hail Mary together.
Of course, this is also the scene where we meet atheistic doctor.
Right. That's the contrast.
Setting.
There's also the murder cannibal guy in prison he talks to.
Yep.
Because what did he used to be? Did Father James used to be a teacher or something, or what was his?
It wasn't super
like he
clear
knew
to
the
me.
kid.
Yeah, he knew the kid from
before.
something or other.
Yeah, the guy who killed and ate people. Funny enough, played by his real life son in the Donald Gleason. But anyway,
but he calls him to the prison and he visits, and it's not for a confession. It's not for anything like pastoral. It's just he wants someone to talk to who will listen,
which is pastoral.
Which is pastoral, yes. But like not
no sacraments going on
yeah,
here.
That's what I meant.
he raises the point, can God forgive somebody like me who's done something incredibly grotesque and horrible? Can he be saved? Basically, he raises that question. I forget what Father James's response to it was.
He's essentially like, if you were sincere,
Yeah,
but you're not.
Right. Like
You don't really think you've done anything wrong.
he takes he's very nonchalant about describing the horrible things he's done to his victims. And
He kind of makes the point that contrition is necessary. Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't just go through
it
the
seems
motion.
like he's almost bordering on a sort of imperfect contrition because he's on death row.
Yeah,
At least the fear of hell is there.
but he also doesn't ask for any of it.
no,
so
he doesn't.
he's sort of just there to gloat in a way.
Yeah, yeah, and because that raised an interesting, like the point, like can even somebody who's done something horrible still be forgiven? Because to sort of the secular mind, like that concept where somebody can do all sorts of horrible crimes and then ask for forgiveness from God and He'll give it to them, but that's just sort of that's not a mark against God's justice. That's
just a
his
mindset
mercy.
that
There's still
people aren't living in.
Right. There's still a temporal punishments for sin. Like this guy's on death row, and he didn't ask for forgiveness either. But yes, it is possible.
Yes, it's
people like that to
possible.
attain
It's
salvation.
again
It
a
is
heart
difficult.
level issue for
Yeah,
people.
it is difficult to accept.
It's not a rational question because rationally it makes
And there
perfect
are
sense.
lots of heart level issues in this movie.
Oh yeah, but we'll get to that in the Transcendentals maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where
Is that most of the people?
He continues to.
that's most of the
that's
people.
most of
You
them.
got the bartender,
Yeah,
Yeah.
who's just kind of the bartender,
and he's
He doesn't
gradually, connecting with his daughter and helping her heal.
and the policeman.
Yeah, who also has a bit of a
Issue.
yeah. Well,
He's got his own things.
yeah,
There's
he's kind of lackadaisical. It's like like
In typical Irish fashion, kind of jaded and cynical about everything.
Yeah. He even
Um,
obtains a gun from the policeman, which was used in the Bloody Sunday massacre. So we're just bringing up all the Irish woes in this movie.
Speaking of woes, his church burns down
Yes.
On a Thursday.
on a Thursday.
Yep.
So like midway through the week, that's kind of the
The beginning of the passion, as it were.
Yep.
The title of the film being Calvary. There's many clear allusions to the passion.
Because to this point, and he goes through basically over the next day a sort of agony in the garden type of deal, because to this point, he's kind of gone about his priestly duties in good humor, all things considered, and trying to hold things in charity. But we get a hint that, in his past, he used to be a bit of a drinker, and he sort of falls back into that, and he falls back into sort of anger at like his situation, like the prospect of death and how unjust it is and all these things. And so he gets into a bit of a spat in the bar with the bartender, but ultimately comes to his senses.
By getting his teeth knocked out
Yeah.
with a baseball bat or a hurling bat. It's probably not a hurl bat because it's not flat. But anyway, he goes home, cusses out his fellow priest, and wakes up the next day to find his fellow priest packing up and leaving.
Yeah. Because he had, out of anger, said some very true things to that priest that made him realize, oh, I'm not all that serious about my faith. I have doubts.
But also, he's not all that appreciated here, or he's not even welcome in some respect,
Yeah.
Doesn't feel like it anymore.
But Father James is like, I didn't mean to drive you away. I was angry, but I was trying to make you have more integrity as a priest. And the guy realized he couldn't really live up to that.
At what point does his dog die? Is it like the next day?
The dog dies before the church burns down,
Oh, okay.
I think.
But yeah,
Just
I
sort
thought,
of
it
a
was,
random-
I thought it was after.
Around
I
that time.
thought it was after,
It
during
might be
the kind
after,
of darker
yeah.
half of
It was,
the film.
I thought, Friday night.
Yeah. Yeah, his
The dog dies. He wakes up Saturday morning and buries it.
Yeah.
Which is when he sends his daughter off, and she's like, "Oh, say goodbye to the dog for me." He's like, "Yep, done that."
And by this point, he's sort of, reconciled and connected with his daughter because, she felt, when her mom died that she had sort of been abandoned because he went up to the priesthood, so she was left alone. But he manages to sort of reconcile with her about that and rekindle their love for each other as father and daughter. But yeah, on that Friday, just all these things about these people's like lack of appreciation for the church, their disdain for him as a priest, all these things come to a head on that Friday. Like, he's out on his walk along the ocean, and then he just comes across this young girl and just strikes up a normal conversation. And then her dad comes up and is just like, get out of here, creep, leave her alone. Like all these things are just sort of driving right to his heart. Yeah, it comes to a head with his outburst of anger that night. But yeah, Saturday rolls along. I'm trying to remember what happens next.
He packs up and drives to an airport, presumably in Sligo, and is about to leave. But, get away from his impending murder. But then he meets the French woman. She's like, "Are you heading out? You doing some vacation or something?" He's like, "No, now that I've run into you again, I don't know that I am." Mm-hmm. He's kind of reminded.
She's flying her husband's body home to be buried. And he looks at it on the tarmac.
He's like,
yeah.
I know what I have to do.
Yep. So he kind of
certainly I couldn't necessarily be faulted for not doing this, but I'm going to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And so he returns.
Sunday morning comes.
Sunday morning, he has a few encounters. He meets the old writer man. He meets the rich guy who finally admits
he's got a major hole in his heart, and he's grasping for something.
What did he do with the gun? I forget. Did he give it to him?
He chucked it in the water.
Chucked it in the water. That's what it was. Because he didn't give it to him, but he also didn't take it with him on his beach encounter. Mm-hmm. He tossed it in the water. That's what it was.
Yep.
Hurled it into the sea.
But yeah, he was talking to the rich guy, and he was grasping something to hold on to in his life, and sort of at his breaking point internally, and it seemed to be like opening up to some sort of conversion experience. He's like, "Okay, go home, and then later on today I'll meet up with you and we can talk some
I've got someone to see right now."
Yep.
And so he goes down to the beach.
Yep. And who comes along but the butcher, whose wife is doing things with the guy from Guinea. And he's got a gun.
Mm-hmm. And Father James, talks with him. He's like, "Yes, what you went through is horrible and unforgivable. Well, not unforgivable, but it's horrible, and you're right to be angry." He tries to talk him out of down. It's like, we can talk about this. We can,
But the whole time he keeps his composure, and he doesn't shrink away, and he doesn't plead for his life or anything like that.
He faces him head on, but also with compassion.
Yep.
With
offering
a desire to help.
With honesty about his own shortcomings.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, did you cry when you heard the news? Did you cry when your dog died first? He asked him. He's like, "Yeah, I loved my dog."
And he's like,
"Did you cry when you heard the news about all these innocent young people being abused?"
He did burn down the church, but he didn't kill the dog. He's like, "No, that was Matt. I didn't kill the dog." So we don't even know who killed the dog. That was just somebody being spiteful. But sort of a side note. But yeah, it's like, you didn't cry when you heard the news about what happened to me and people like me, and the sort of the abuse scandal in Ireland when that hit.
Yeah, because you just detached yourself from it.
It seemed far away.
Mm-hmm. And it was at that point when he's explaining it that he gets shot.
And he's like, "Say your prayers, Father." He's like, "I've already said them." And he shoots him and kills him.
The altar boy is on the beach painting and sees it and runs and gets the police. You get a couple of parting shots of people we've seen earlier in the film and what they're up to right now. Most of it's kind of just the same routine.
Staying in their sins and doing whatever it is they do.
And end of movie.
Yep.
And one crucial scene.
Yes.
The Fiona, Father James's daughter, walks into the jail where the butcher man is being held, and she picks up the phone to speak with him.
Which is
there it ends.
Sort of an ambiguous ending, but he'd been talking to his daughter about forgiveness.
There's too much talk about sins, he said, and not enough talk about virtues.
Yep.
And Fiona asks him, what virtues do you think are most important? What do we need to talk about? And he's like, forgiveness, I think, has been highly underrated.
Yep.
And the film ends with maybe, who knows?
What is certainly implied
Forgiveness.
to be, or could be.
Could be.
It is left open to the possibility.
It's sort of like the ending of Inception, where it's like, does the top fall over? Or doesn't it? It's ambiguous. You can interpret it either way and glean some meaning from it. So yeah, that's where it ends. Pretty somber movie, but
Indeed.
thought-provoking.
And I think the somber tone,
Solemn, I'd say.
solemn tone, meshes well with just kind of the atmosphere of Ireland, the kind of gray,
It is a
cloudy
very
skies.
much a parody of the state of the faith, or not parody, parable. That's what I meant to say, of the faith in Ireland over the last few centuries.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of wounds, lots of pain, which has been responded to with cynicism and nihilism.
And a lack of responsibility on the part of most of the priests.
Yep.
And in many cases contributing to the damage when they are the ones who are supposed to have been protectors, caretakers, spiritual fathers, have committed some of the most heinous acts imaginable. And it's all the more catastrophic for it. This movie to me just feels like just an expression of the tremendous pain that Ireland is in as a nation, but particularly as regards the faith. And kind of a showing of what a good priest can be like. Because most people had nothing ill to say of Father James,
He was picked to be a victim because he was a good priest.
He didn't ram the faith down their throats, which you could argue is a fault. He almost never speaks about Christ at any point. But I go over this. I mull over this a lot since I've watched this movie the first time. Is he a good priest?
Yeah.
And there's certainly a lot of commendable aspects. I mean, he's pastoral. Like he's among his people. He smells like the sheep in a certain regard. He accompanies them wherever they are. So many people are in such persistent, manifest public sin, and he's not there to wag his finger at them and tell them off. He's like, I'm your father. I'm going to be here.
Yep. Yeah.
I mean, confessional's open if you want to go there, but I'm not going to push you into it and lock the door.
On more than one occasion makes clear he doesn't approve of the actions of these people.
He's very explicit on that point, but he also isn't. He doesn't condemn them for it.
He doesn't wag the book in front of them, per se. He sort of walks that line and calls their bluff when they're not repentant. Like, with the rich guy, he just keeps calling him over to his house to kind of show him how much, how rich he is and how much he doesn't care. And he's like, okay, talk to me when you are sincere about anything in your life. Because you're wasting my time otherwise.
And there was exactly one proper confession in that film, and even that was, it followed the proper order, but it was very insincere.
With his daughter?
Not with his daughter.
Because she's talking to him in the confessional, but it's hard.
Right.
I don't know if that was even a confession.
I don't think it was.
There was somebody else who was like, "Oh, bless me, Father, for I have sinned in this and this and this." And
right. It was just out in public,
yeah,
at the pub or the restaurant or whatever.
The restaurant, yeah.
And Veronica comes up and is like, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned."
Oh, it was the wife who comes in and is like, "Hey, let's do this." I was like, "You don't actually mean any of that, and you're just gonna go back to it. There's your boyfriend outside the window right now."
Yep.
So
it's sort of like a sarcastic, sort of a thing. But yeah, any other I guess, noteworthy things to talk about for the film.
And yet, you can say there's a lot of ways where he was quite permissive of
Yeah.
the sins that were going on. I mean, it's just very human. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's
into his
not
anger
he's
and his
not an
vice.
exceptional priest. He's not the model of Christ-like virtue that I would have I would hope a priest would be, but he is there. He shows up. He's faithful.
Because the reality is most priests are going to be like that.
They're gonna have their
The other
issues.
guy.
They're human. They have their issues.
The other guy is sort of the
Very-
one for whom you should have clear disdain. Like
Very aloof.
a workaday priest is kind of the most disgusting thing ever. It's just like, why don't you just go be an accountant?
Yep.
Why are you a priest at all? And there's a certain recognition kind of on the part of the filmmakers, like that's just very clearly what a priest is not supposed to be.
Yeah. Some sort of administrator.
A paper pusher, a sort of by the book cleric. Like nobody needs that. Nobody wants that.
Because when the church burns down and the rich guy comes in, he's like, hey, I could probably build you a new church that was way nicer than the one you ever had before. He's just sort of fawning over him, about like, oh, so generous.
Well,
sir.
let's get this donation down on paper, shall we?
Yeah. Very patronizing.
Mm-hmm.
He hasn't really bought it. He hasn't really seen through the smoke screen like Father James has. Just trying to fill an empty hole in his life by flaunting his wealth. He just is sort of almost an empty collar in a lot of ways. And at the end of the movie, you see him reading the God delusion. Yeah. So his faith was on rocky ground, as it were. Seeds on rocky ground, as it were. Or not even like the hard ground, it seems more like. Because he basically left the priesthood at the drop of a hat after one difficulty.
So there are other points we could bring up, but I think
That'd be better for the transcendental analysis
they
bit.
might just. What do you think?
I think so.
So truths. What is true in Calvary?
Ireland's in some real pain.
Yeah.
Mm.
The church at large, but particularly because Ireland is a very ancient Catholic culture. Like it goes back to the 800s, 700s?
I think
No,
earlier than
earlier,
that
very
even.
early.
I want to say
church.
600s.
Yeah, 600s. Obviously, the whole thing with St. Patrick evangelizing Ireland and all that. But the church runs deep in Ireland, and it is sad to see it in the state that it is, the relationship the people and the church have with one another now, compared to what it once had been. The land of monks and missionaries now turned into a cynical pit of debauchery and
Despair.
despair. Yeah.
And there's like one of the big like themes is like kind of a lack of fatherhood.
Yeah.
Kind of there's kind of been a death of
There's
fatherhood
no-
culturally,
There's no
but also
like complete family in this movie portrayed.
and that's kind of a theme with all the characters. For one thing, Father James himself has a daughter with whom his relationship has been rocky and strained, and he's been an incomplete father to her.
And his wife has passed away.
His
So
wife
there
has
is
passed away.
that family has been broken by death.
Yep.
And he's trying his best to be pastoral to his parish, but they're not the most receptive to it. There's
The one married couple in the village is like, the wife is unfaithful and they don't have any kids.
the rich guy drove his family away by just not being present, like emotionally or mentally or anything. Like
And being
there's a
sort of a
crisis
slimy-
of family,
Yeah.
and that's
extends out into the parish and into the wider community.
But also when like family members that should be that close break trust like that, how can you build that trust back up again? How can you,
Especially
How-
when that family is your spiritual family in the church.
right? How very hard it can be to mend that hurt, you know?
The wages of sin is death.
And there's also a lot of talk of death in this film.
Yeah.
That's very Irish,
Yeah.
to be sure.
Oh, for sure. But also, like, there's one person attempted suicide. One person constantly talks about suicide.
One person talks about.
One person goes to the confessional and is like, "Hey, didn't Jesus commit suicide?"
Oh,
That was
yeah.
that. She brought up like there was some like serial killer in Japan or something who had a list of famous people who committed suicide. Jesus was on that list, and that's distinct from suicide. In fact, that's kind of one of the points it comes to at the end. When he goes out and meets his fate, he isn't actively trying to get himself killed.
He is laying down his life.
Should it come to that,
Yeah.
he hoped there was hope that he could turn the situation around, but also he was not resigned, but resolved.
accepted.
He was accepted of that outcome.
And recognized that probably this would be an offering of his life to begin a process of healing for this man and for
Yeah.
many others perhaps. And he took the sins of his whole parish on himself.
He took the sins of his role.
Right.
On himself.
He did the Jesus thing.
Indeed, he did.
He's lies on the ground in the shape of a cross when he's shot.
Yes. The first place he gets shot is under his rib where
Yep.
the spear pierced,
Mm-hmm.
Very
cruciform.
very sort of a very Christological.
That's kind of a more beautiful
symbolic.
thing. But yes, the identification of the priesthood with sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
is highlighted
With
here.
Jesus' role as sacrifice
Right.
and also the priest.
Jesus as the high priest.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Something he
The
didn't do
one
wrong.
the one final offering.
Dying for something he didn't do wrong. In a way.
But like for the sake of everyone else.
Yep. And that is
'Cause
ultimately what the call of a
he-
priest is to be.
There was every opportunity for him to turn that into something of despair.
Yep.
Into something of
Selfishness.
selfishness, of some to turn it into a suicide.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it never became that. He approached it Christ-like, as a sacrifice, as a
Whether white or red, the martyrdom of a priest is crucial. It is the full and complete offering of himself for the church, for the people of God.
and in that ultimately where he lands is being a good priest. He may or may not start that way or be that way throughout the film, but at least he ends on that note.
Always striving for that.
Because we all fall short of it, but at those crucial moments, being faithful goes a long way.
I suppose that kind of goes hand in hand with the goodness part
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
Nothing really new to cover there.
Well, let's transition cleanly into goodness, restate what exactly was the good part.
Yeah. The good part is that it is wholly desirable that he offered his life in this way. While it is regrettable that a man should commit murder, it also recognizes the heroic sacrifice that is in itself desirable. And the other standout point is the French woman,
Yes. Yeah.
because she is the only person in this movie that I think
Who's
has
truly faithful.
It's hard to say what Father James's interior life is like. We don't get much of a window into that, but you get the sense that it's not, he's not a lifer. He doesn't have that kind of spirituality that other priests might have, like a
There's
monk
certainly
might
a
have.
great deal of sincerity there.
He's
Right.
sincere, but like he's not the most deeply spiritual man, according to my take.
It's the sort of thing where I felt like he wasn't as deeply spiritual as he probably ought to have been for that role. But he also recognizes that's a weakness of his and does his best about it without like ever truly getting as good as he ought to about it,
But it stands in contrast with this lay woman who just has a deep faith, a monumental trust that her husband is now in the Lord's hands, and that she entrusts her own life and her own future and her own family to the Lord. It's like, that's really beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice to see a bright spot in this kind of
Yes.
canvas of darkness.
Yeah.
But also, she's not like from Ireland. She is an outsider. She is outside of this deeply Catholic historically culture.
France
French
is too.
True.
French
French
Catholicism
is-
goes back a long ways.
It
And
does.
France has had plenty of its problems.
It does also. But like, it's interesting that like the one like truly shining example of good Catholic life is
And outside.
an outsider.
A Samaritan of sorts, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So,
That would have had to have been an English person if it were to be
Yeah.
a real Samaritan.
yeah,
The
the
Irish
Romans,
aren't too fond.
of the English.
So beauty.
Beauty, yeah. Very well shot. Sort of minimal music, but impactful. Obviously, the writing of the film and the story structure and the themes are very poignant.
And it's very like well acted. There was some very
Yeah.
moving performances.
Some good actors. I recognized a lot of the actors and didn't realize they were Irish from various things.
Also just kind of manages to capture the atmosphere
Yep.
really well. For one thing, like the film as a whole has a very like bleak atmosphere to it. But like also if you look at the weather patterns in Ireland, you've got just the shades of gray in the canopy of clouds
With the
then
deep, rich green.
with the deep rich green. So it's like this kind of there's shots where the scenery can be very bleak, but also shots where it can be very like full of life and like hope and beauty, It kind of like manages to I don't know. And it's just very much
Which is the condition of Ireland.
it's the
like,
character of
yeah.
Ireland. Yeah, it captures that.
the contrast between like the earth that's just full of life and the constant cloudiness that engenders this sort of contemplative in its best, when it's used for good. Like the Irish have a very contemplative spirit. You just kind of like imagine a person looking out a rainy window and just kind of praying and being like
Or
that's
painting
kind
a
of the Irish
landscape on a beach.
spirituality.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unity. What brings everything together?
Father James does
Yes.
his priesthood and his fatherhood.
And also the fact that it's called Calvary. Things get kicked off on a Thursday. There's a dark night of the soul on Friday. He acts in persona Christi at the end, essentially.
That's the passion moved up a couple days.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, right, because he dies.
He dies
Friday.
on Sunday.
He dies on a Sunday there, yeah. But still, like it's very like runs parallel to that on purpose.
Because you can see that without him, basically the faith of the town goes out the window.
He's like the last remaining pillar of faith in this town, upon which everything
Because
is
there are
leaning,
still
and he's
good
buckling
priests
under the
in
weight.
Ireland who seek to bring God to the world, but
There's
they're
good
hanging on
priests
by a thread.
everywhere that are doing just that. but it only takes one bad one, and unfortunately, there was a lot more than just one bad one out there over the course of recent history.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's
This
Calvary.
it kind of it shows this is what a priest should do. A priest should sacrifice.
Yeah.
Not always in every case to that extreme, but like, should it come to that, that's
But it is the purpose of his life to be an offering.
Because whether or not he does or doesn't do that has this profound impact on his flock.
mm-hmm.
So it's very crucial role priests play in our lives.
Or at the very least, they ought to.
Yes.
If you're doing being Catholic well.
And it's something worth, to the world, it is difficult to see because ultimately God is the judge of everything we do in life and justice is his. So ultimately the church is accountable to him. People tend to look at the church as like this big corrupt earthly institution. But ultimately these people throughout history in the church who have been given great power over the people are also very much accountable to God for that.
It only gets corrupt the more earthly it gets.
Yeah. Jesus is very clear about, whoever suffers, one of the little ones, or like whoever leads, the least among you to sin will have a millstone put around his neck and cast into the ocean. Like,
Would have been better for him had he never been born.
yeah, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. So, like, that's something worth keeping in mind whenever one is tempted into a sort of tempted to despair about the state of the church. Not that I've ever really gotten to that point myself, because like you have that understanding that ultimately they're priests of the Lord and we all answer to God, but especially his shepherds. So
The ones that are meant to be configured after his own heart.
yeah, exactly.
And are ontologically so. Just whether they live that out is in question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I guess any other comments?
I think that covers just about all the major talking points here.
Yeah.
It's still a movie that gives me great ponderance.
Yes.
Oh yes.
It's hard to exhaust the
Like
themes
we could
here.
probably do a second podcast on it, do it after a second viewing, honestly.
We're
But
not going to, but
We're
we
not
could.
going to. But it's that kind of movie,
It's
so that
wo-
even after hearing
It's
us talk
definitely
about
something
it,
you
there's
need to
something
watch
to
more
glean
than
from
once.
It's quite crude and crass, but and graphic. But if you can handle that, well worth it.
But that's also like being part
It's
of the
real.
raw Irish
real.
character,
Yeah.
like because the
That's-
stereotype of Irish people swearing up a storm, it's rooted
Comes from
in something.
somewhere. Comes from somewhere, yeah. So, yeah, I think that's what we got for this week.
That's it.
Yeah. Listen, we're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can
Maybe soon YouTube.
maybe soon YouTube.
We'll see
Cool.
what that's about.
We'll maybe have sort of a studio space in the near future in our soon-to-be basement. So stay tuned. You can email us with questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, or suggestions for future episodes at palladiumpapist@gmail.com. Like and share the podcast. Follow us on the stuff. Not that we'll necessarily post anything, but you never know. We were chided by a fan at some point in the recent past for never posting anything on Twitter anymore, so my bad.
Anymore.
Well, anyway,
Ever.
That assumes we ever did.
back when the auto feature was still in Streamlabs. Anyway, auto tweet feature. We will talk to you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.